Royal Bank of Canada has seen a tremendous result this year, increasing brand value by 43%. A huge congratulations to everyone at RBC for this fantastic achievement. And joining me now to discuss this success is Mary DePaoli, EVP and Chief Marketing Officer. Hi Mary, and thanks for joining us today.
Hello Martin, thank you for having me.
So we're going to start with a very macro question to begin with. How do you believe brands add value to businesses?
Well, a company's brand is really its steel thread that runs through every interaction that you have with your stakeholders, every key message, every marketing message, your thought leadership efforts, the way you attract talent, the conversations that you have with your clients. And so every moment, every interaction is really a reflection of your brand and your brand promise. So the value of any strong brand is being able to reach people in relevant and very memorable ways at every stage of that customer's life cycle, and ultimately turn prospects into customers and ultimately into ambassadors for your brand over time. So the more that a company is able to forge these strong emotional connections with people, the more powerful and ultimately the more valuable your brand will be in driving business results and obviously new sources of growth for the organization.
Sure. And as a experienced brand builder yourself, what do you think are the most important aspects to consider when building a strong brand?
You know, there are many aspects that marketers have to consider, whether it's growing a brand or evolving a brand. But I would say three come to mind in particular, and it always starts with a very clear and relevant point of view of how your company sees the world, how your company chooses to navigate that world, and of course, how that point of view reflects your purpose and your values as an organization. So I think this is critical to a brand's success, because what it does is it enables your employees across the organization to mobilize in a very consistent way and allow each of these brand interactions to be meaningful, relevant, and of course, true from one experience to the next. So that would be the first thing. I would say the second thing is, in order to build a strong brand, it must be anchored in a company's purpose. Every brand is expected to make a positive contribution to society. Perhaps that is true more now than it ever has been. And whether it's consumers or shareholders or just the quest for top talent, the attraction of or the retention of, they all want purpose-driven brands that reflect their values and reflect the type of organization that they wish to do business with. So purpose is a key one. And then finally, I would say that relevance is the third factor. The world's best brands understand their place in a customer's life cycle, in a customer's journey, and through the use of data and constant insights that continue to evolve, how they achieve that relevance and maintain that relevance in a customer's life is critical to long-lasting relationship value and brand value.
And clearly, at the moment, globally, we're living through a particularly tumultuous time for the world. What do you see as the biggest headwinds over the next year or two for brands and businesses, and how are RBC going to tackle some of those headwinds?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are living at a time right now where there are so many significant shocks. We have seen social, political, health, economic events that are going to be impacting businesses for years to come, perhaps generations to come. And, of course, they have a wide range of impacts in and of themselves. We are dealing as a society, as a world, with rising inflation, supply chain shortages. We're dealing with talent shortages in key areas, key skill sets, and of course, changing consumer needs. And those needs are changing with a velocity that I think we've never seen before, and certainly that has been born out of the changes that we've seen over the last 2.5 years with the pandemic. So, these shifts have appeared, and they are constantly causing businesses and marketers to keep evolving, staying true to their values and true to their purpose, but evolving nonetheless. So I think hand in hand with what we're seeing are increased headwinds that are also shaping the complex nature of what it means to maintain your reputation and to grow your reputation. But reputational risk is something that companies are also having to navigate with significant dexterity, if you will, but always tying it back to what they stand for as a purpose, and that authenticity is critical. But it is an increasingly challenging world that we're living in, and stakeholders of all types are demanding more transparency from brands and from organizations, and obviously more thought leadership as well. So I would say that those are some of the areas that we are navigating. And then, of course, the one area that I think is top of mind on every company's agenda is, of course, climate change. And that is, without a doubt, I would say one of the most pressing issues of our lifetime. And, just the transition to a net zero economy, what it means for companies, what it means for communities, to societies, and to the world as we live in a state of how we are trying to tackle this, consistently. That is going to require significant innovation, significant investments in capital at all levels of society, from government to companies, right down to individuals.
It's really interesting to hear you say that, and we'll come back and talk specifically about sustainability in a few minutes' time. But it's also interesting to hear you talk about consumers and customers, and obviously maintaining that customer connection is critical. So how do you approach maintaining that customer connection at RBC?
Well, I think if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's the importance of a human connection. And so it starts with a denominator of ensuring that we have where the customer feels it's most warranted, that human connection, to understanding them, to ensuring that they've got the ability to navigate our organization on their terms. And then, of course, that is augmented significantly by data and the smart use of data, and ensuring that data adds value at every customer touch point and interaction, so that we are constantly showing value, demonstrating value at every point of that customer journey. So for example, a couple of things that RBC has done which illustrate that point. The launch of our owner platform, which allows entrepreneurs who are customers of RBC to have a full suite of tools and data to start and maintain a business. And so we've extended it beyond banking to include other aspects of our customers' journey. At the other end of the spectrum, reaching out to very young customers or soon to be customers with the launch of an app called Mido, which allows us to teach solid money habits in a gamified way to the youngest of consumers, and having that as an experience that they can share with their families. So making sure that we are being human, using data, and extending our value and our use well beyond banking are just some of the ways that we are interacting differently with our customers.
Very interesting. And you talked about customers and maintaining the connection. And it sounds like you have a lot of conversations and an open dialogue with your customers. What would you say are the things that you've learned over the last 2 to 5 years that really illustrates how customer needs have changed?
Well, and customer needs have really changed. And I would say that in particular, the last 2.5 years have accelerated that change at a velocity that I think no one could have appreciated. And we're still learning, right? As we come out of this global pandemic, we are still learning about how our customers are changing and shaping the way they want to interact with brands and interact with companies. But I would say two things come to mind in particular in terms of significant change. So one, of course, is the acceleration of digital. And we need to be very skilled as marketers at operating across two worlds: the traditional world that some customers still prefer to interact in, and of course the virtual world that is very much upon us, and also the interconnectivity between those two worlds, because nothing is linear, and we are constantly navigating with customers through both. And so we've made some significant shifts in investment to ensuring that we are much more effective and targeted in our use of media and our use of partnerships in that regard. And then the second thing that I will say that we've observed about customers is there has been a significant shift to more socially conscious products and services that our customers are looking for. And I will say that has been across every segment of our customer base, certainly much more amplified with our next gen customers. But I would say that by and large, customers are looking for brands and products and services and thought leadership that reflect how they are interacting with society, with community, with the planet. And they're looking for ways that they can do that in a much more socially responsible way.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds as though your conversations and that ongoing dialogue with customers generates lots of useful insights for you. But I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you actually connect those insights within your business and actually make decisions as a result.
Yes, well, with the rise of so many digital channels now and the deep use of data, our focus is on building consistent full funnel and always on marketing capabilities right across our teams. So I would say that this starts with identifying the proper target audience and then looking at those audiences and leveraging research and insights just to better understand the brand health of that audience in this context, segmentation, perceptions, the competitive landscape, the competitiveness of the offers that we are looking to put in front of those particular segments. And then using an always on approach, we move those segments through a full funnel exercise. So top of the funnel, of course, sponsorships, brand advertising, looking to ensure that we are striking the right perception of who RBC is and the values that we have and what we can do to add value to the life of that prospective customer. Moving into the middle of the funnel, of course, we will then look at much more advanced use of data, of content, to ensure that we are within their consideration set as they look to make a decision across a product or a service or any offering. And then, of course, further down in the funnel, that's where we get very targeted with offers and use of tools and technology so that we are generating leads that we will then refer or closing an interaction in that moment. So for us, the key is moving through the funnel in a way that is very orchestrated, very consistent, heavy use of data, and that is basically segmented by customer, by segment, so that we are ensuring it's the right offer with the right value at the right moment in that journey.
Okay. And can you give me an example of how a customer insight has driven actual tangible strategic change within the business?
Yes, several years ago, we did a full review of our retail brand, our retail banking brand in Canada. And through some research and the insights that followed, we discovered something interesting. We had a very good brand perception amongst our existing customers. Certainly, when they got to know RBC and could use RBC on a frequent basis, they had a very positive predisposition to RBC. But what we did notice is that for non-customers, and in particular younger customers, there was a perception gap that perhaps we were not as approachable or as friendly as some of our other key competitors. And so that insight drove wholesale change within our organization to make sure that we could close that gap and make sure that we were working a little harder, especially at that top and middle of the funnel that I just described. And so to address this, we made investments at the top of the funnel. We determined that there was a different use of messaging, a different use of sponsorships, and a different use of how we told our story so that we could get a different traction, of course, all lined back to our values, our purpose, our brand promise, and how we view our role in society. And so telling that story in a much more effective way was really important for us because that gap was one that we wanted to close. Fast forward a few years later, we are number one in Canada, and we're very proud to be number one, including across that younger cohort of client where the gap was largest at the time.
That's a really good example. And just zooming out again now, if you think about the world of brand building generally, how do you think that is likely to change in the next 5 years, and where do you see the opportunities?
I think for marketers, the next even 2 to 3 years are going to be marked by significant challenges and significant opportunities. And I think it's a reality that the two will go hand in hand for years to come. When I think about the current environment, it's marked by so much uncertainty, so much misinformation. And so we believe that consumers are going to look for companies that are credible, brands that are credible, leaders and leadership that is courageous and credible. And I think that consumers will increasingly put far more value on brands that go from being just brands to taking a stand on the issues that matter most to them as citizens and where there's a real value alignment. And so, although it's difficult for brands because we live in such a complex world, I do believe that the brands that show that kind of leadership, thought leadership, and credibility and alignment to their values and purpose are the brands that will have the most opportunity to gain a consumer's trust and ultimately a consumer's business over time, and keep that business over time. I think there is also a significant opportunity for brands to be a true force for good and to really lean into their values and their purpose, and just to demonstrate through actions beyond just words what corporate citizenship means and how it appears in their communities where they live and work. So I think those are some of the opportunities that we have in front of us.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about corporate citizenship, because clearly the topic of sustainability is very important in the world and will continue to be for a long time yet. Can you talk us through RBC's sustainability agenda and strategy? And what do you see are the biggest challenges for you to overcome as part of that?
Yes, so ESG has been a significant part of our journey, and I would say, even before we use the acronym of ESG, RBC has for 150 years been on that journey of ensuring that we are demonstrating good corporate citizenship in all of our markets, in all of our communities, and we've got a long history of doing that. Our ESG activities are described in our ESG strategy, which we publish every year. But I'll walk through just kind of the core areas of what that strategy is, starting with the E, starting with environment. So we do have a commitment to invest over $500 billion in sustainable financing from now to 2025. We have funded over 100 different organizations through our Tech for Nature platform. And we are committed as an organization to achieving net zero in our own operations by 2025. So these are just some of the targets around the environment piece of ESG that are certainly not without challenges, but which we are very focused on ensuring that we achieve and that we provide disclosure around every year. When it comes to our social commitments, that is something that I would say is multifaceted, but we sort of focus our energy in a few key areas. First, around the area of diversity and inclusion. Second, around the area of empowering young people for the future of work, just given the velocity of change that young people around the world are seeing, and just the match of their academic background or skill background to the skills of the future. And the third would be around inclusive finance and ensuring that we are allowing for and making banking much more accessible for all. So those would be around our social pillars, some of the key areas that we would over-index on. And then when it comes to governance, it's around disclosure and transparency and ensuring that we have strong governance practices in place and ensuring that we have constantly increasing focus on our transparency around the goals and objectives that we have to bring our ESG strategy to life. So that's generally a real summary of just some of the work that we're doing in that regard.
Yeah, it's fascinating to hear. And we at Cantor obviously talk to lots of consumers, we talk to lots of clients as well, and increasingly it's great to hear clients having a very clear plan when it comes to sustainability, and it sounds like you really have that. But from talking to those same clients, it seems the challenge is making that sustainability agenda and some of those initiatives actually mean something to consumers and customers in your case. So how are you going to approach, or how are you already approaching, making that agenda relevant and meaningful to your customer base?
Yes, and relevance is the key. And what we do with our ESG agenda is ensure that there is relevance to our key stakeholders as we navigate how we solve together some of society's most challenging and complex issues, because these issues, they impact us all. They impact citizens, companies, organizations, governments. And as an organization, we are only as strong in the community as the communities in which we live and work. And that is a fundamental truth no matter where you are in the world. So relevance is key. And I would say that we've identified our ESG pillars according to the relevance that they would have to our key stakeholders, be they our shareholders, our clients, or our employees. And that's really where we start. I would also say that a big part of how we execute our ESG strategy goes beyond simply the investments that we make. It really is about how organizations bring a more than money approach to solving some of society's greatest challenges. Certainly, investment, donations, how we deploy capital is a critical part of that problem solving that we all must do. But thought leadership is also important. How we galvanize our employees through volunteer hours, through commitments to their communities, it all adds up into a more than money approach that we bring to our ESG strategy to ensure that we are making impact. And the way to make impact is to measure impact against your targets and goals, and then hold yourself accountable through the disclosure and the transparency process that is fundamental to any ESG strategy.
And that's a lovely segue to my final question, actually. So the other challenge we hear lots from clients is being able to demonstrate that there are some successes, there's some progress as part of a sustainability agenda. So how do you do that at RBC? And do you have a tangible example of where you've made some demonstrable progress so far within that agenda?
Yes, and truly, this is the world we live in, one of transparency, and one around, one of measuring and ensuring that we are showing our impact, the positive impact and the change that it ultimately has for society and for communities. One example for RBC was we embarked on our biggest donation, our biggest single donation in our company's history a few years ago, when we committed $500 million over 10 years to help young people navigate the future of work. And that was through creating work integrated learning opportunities, creating mentorship and sponsorship opportunities, and helping young people transition skills for the future, and ensuring they knew how to map their existing skills to the future skills that are so critical to any economy. We committed to reaching 3 million people with that $500 million commitment. And I'm so happy to say that 6 years into that commitment, we are easily going to top reaching 4 million young people. And the impact is critical. We interview every one of the individuals that use our services, use the tools that we have created, the partnerships that we've undertaken. And 78% of all of the 3.6 million people that we have reached to date have said that their interactions with all of our programming and with our partners have significantly changed their outcomes as young people ready for the future. So they feel a greater sense of preparedness and a greater sense of readiness. And so this is the type of impact that we like to measure, that we like to see. And it shows that our efforts, our more than money approach, and our investments are actually changing things for the better.
Very impressive. Well, Mary, some fantastic insights there for everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having us.